16. Are you ready, Stephen? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. This is the Ordinance Committee meeting. Is there any public comment? Is there any public comment going twice? Any public comment going 3 times? No public comment. Okay. Discussion and take possible action, referral from the Board of Select Persons on blight. Did you have any question on the blight one? We're looking at both the residential and the commercial.
I forgot to bring them with me because I haven't been home yet today. So my apologies on that.
All right. Let's go to the authorizing the use of the, let's go to B. Authorizing the use of the automatic traffic enforcement and safety devices. As we know that this was written by the police commissioners, this is a new law that was passed by legislation. So they just took it from law. We really have no say over it. I say we take it and just bring it to the Board of Select Persons.
I agree.
Okay. Well, there's only 2 of us. So motion to move the authorization of the use of automated traffic enforcement safety devices to the Board of Select Persons.
So moved.
Motion by Trish. There's no one here to second, so I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 2-0. Thank you. Okay. So on the open burn, we can discuss it, but no action as it was referred by the fire marshal, but needs to be moved to the Board of Select Persons.
I'm fine trusting the fire marshal to write that ordinance as well.
So am
He
I.
knows much more than I do about that and what has to be followed and people's safety. So I'm comfortable with that.
So just move that one to the Board of Select
I
Persons as
agree.
well?
Make a
Okay.
motion to move the fire marshal's recommendations for the burn ordinance to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay. I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried 2-0. All right. On the do you not have the anti-blight policy? in front
I
of you?
didn't. I read it, and then I went away, and I worked until I just pulled into Seymour at 6:05 and decided I'm coming right to town hall.
Okay. No worries.
So do I remember? I did read the whole thing. I don't know how far we're going. Are there any other ordinances to go through, or these are just these are the 3? Okay.
This is the 3. That's it.
All right. All right,
You
so
want to take some time to read it?
I did read it. It's
I mean,
not with me for been a
your
couple of
minutes
weeks.
are
Hold
not
on.
with you.
Yeah.
Yay, here's Fred.
Aye. Good evening. How are you?
Rushing, right? Probably better if we make it at 6:30 from now on. All right, just to get you caught up as you're trying to get ready there, Fred. We're still on blight. Regarding the authorizing use for the automated traffic enforcement safety devices, that was written by the chief of police as it was passed by legislations. There's really nothing we can change in it. So we have to forward it to the Board of Select Persons. You agree?
Yeah, we already voted on it.
We
so-
already voted on it. And so we're moving it. As well as the fire marshal, for his open burn ordinance, he took it right from the state. There was one typo, it says deceased, it should say ceased and desist,
Ceased,
not
yep.
cease and deceased. So there was one typo on it, so we voted to move it to the Board of Select Persons because he took it right from the Connecticut General State Statutes. But we have to move it to the Board of Select Persons for them to move it back to us anyway. That enacted? No, but our ordinance says any ordinance has to go in front of the Board of Select Persons so they can go for 30 days.
Why did we have to have an ordinance if it's all codified in the statutes?
I believe we have to have the ordinance so that we can put it in our ordinance. As silly as that sounds. we don't have an ordinance on it, so we can say the state, but just to make it easier for the residents of Seymour, we put it in our ordinances so that we can say it. But we're just reading over the blight one now. Go ahead.
So, when we're looking at definitions,
What do you want?
I just read page 1 and 2 of the definitions, which I understand the
Blight?
definitions and, yes, the blight.
right.
I want to be sure. My issue with our blight ordinance, and again, I vocalized this with the first selectwoman before. It needs to be a little meatier, and I don't know that we're going to accomplish all this tonight, but my biggest concern is we do have I am not looking to cause a financial hardship for people who are on fixed incomes, and I understand, or people who are disabled and also on fixed incomes, or people who are just simply, very few of us are made of money, and there are things that cost a lot of money to fix. So I agree that safety issues are that's going to have to just be something that we do have to address regardless. However, it doesn't address all of the blight issues in town. There are a lot of people who take great pride in their properties, and I don't want to sit here and say the moment paint starts peeling, someone's got to go paint their house, because
Right.
that's a bit much. But in walking around the town, we do have properties that it is, and I wouldn't know how to word this, and this is where I'm struggling. There are properties where it's abundantly clear that a paint job is in high order, and it is irritating neighbors around them that feel that brings the value of their home down because they are not maintaining to, I realize we're not Westport, but we have to have more meat in it, that at some point we have to address those types of issues where, in my opinion, where there is clearly evening, where there's clearly an issue with the maintenance
Yeah.
of a home. And I don't know what's possible. I don't know if someone could present their finances, and if they're willing to do that, if there's some kind of fund we can develop, or I would like to see something where we're able to help people in need, where it's needed and justified, and people would have to be willing to share some information to get approval for that. Because again, I'm not trying to stick people. There are people who are 89 years old who are on fixed incomes, who don't have the means and don't have the ability to go out and fix something of that nature. So I'm not opposed to being creative in finding a way to help these kinds of people where they're willing to share those finances to justify a need for assistance when that situation arises, and where people do have the means, fix it. So I've done a lot of thinking for months and months on this, and I'm still at a standstill on how to address such a situation. But Anne Marie, we've both seen a home that it's very clear that house should be painted, sided, something, because it looks dilapidated. Doesn't mean they have garbage in their front yard. Doesn't mean that the windows are falling off. They're all broken, but
So I just wanna
it
make
really
sure I
puts the neighbors up in the.
make sure I understand what you're saying. So, we have our fine, the land, they have their structure for their fines, and if we're saying that the fine comes in and the homeowner cannot afford said fine, that we take them and almost like in front of appeals, Fred?
Well, anyone who is cited for blight has a right to appeal to the citation officer. The citation officer's sole duty is to listen and impose fees.
So here's the thing.
Would it be a hardship?
Majority of our blight, the blight officer can only address items from the ordinance as they're
Correct.
detailed. You cannot find someone if it doesn't appear to be against the ordinance,
That's right.
right?
Right.
But our ordinance is written where it is clearly more hazardous or safety issues, which I don't necessarily, I mean, I understand that there's a need there. What about a house that is 80% completely peeled paint? That's blight. It doesn't do our town any good, and it's not just thinking about the town. We've spoken with people who have complained about homes where it is, they're looking at it every day across the street or as a next door neighbor. It's an issue. So we need to have, what was the limit on the grass height too?
It was,
Was it 20 or 10?
I think,
Oh, I don't,
Now it's 18.
yeah, I think that's way too generous.
well, we
We
have
have
no
to have-
May. You have no mow May.
I'm sorry?
No mow May.
What's no more May?
So no mow May is, the grasses just come in April and May. And what it is we still have the pollinators. We still have bees and bugs that are still sleeping in the grass. So May, towards the end of May, that is when the warmer weather comes along.
Yeah.
And the bugs are finally, yay, it's warm, right? So the no mow May is not, so that we don't kill even those animals that are bunny nests, anything like that. So you don't mow in May. And it's more or less.
Oh, no mow
Mow
May.
May.
Okay, well, that is not how I heard that.
No
So
May.
I understand that, but that doesn't apply through the whole year, and
June,
people
July,
take advantage.
August, yeah.
There's people who won't mow their lawn for 3 months, and that's an irritant to neighbors, and it doesn't look good for the town as people are driving by. So, again, I don't want to have such a rigid blight ordinance that there's no out, or, especially when there's not a means to address.
12 inches.
But I also think we need to consider cleaning up the town and having, considering some of the aesthetics of it as well, so it is welcoming and inviting to people who are, you're talking about, everyone talks about businesses wanting to come to town. Now, it's not, I get some businesses, it's just going to be about demographics or location and where they are in other areas. But there are some that are not, they're going to look at the town and not want to be here if we can't clean up some of that act as well. So we have to give some thought to it not only being a safety issue or hazardous issue,
But a
and
visual.
also an aesthetic
Yeah.
issue. And I'm struggling a bit in how to balance it, because I do think that there are situations where we're going to have to allow people an out with justification or assistance and help as needed if justifiable. But I'm also not going to support folks who could paint their house and choose not to because they don't want the expense, or mow their grass that's now 17 inches high. I mean, that can also be an
Well, it's
issue.
12
So,
inches high, well, it may 18 inches for 10 days or more. But we can kick this back to land use and say, we want a section in there that says something about the aesthetic look of something. But then,
I mean, I'm just,
what may offend one person may not offend somebody else. So if somebody paints their house bright pink,
well, those are things I don't know that I want to go down. We're not like a home ownership association here.
so
We're
do
a
we
town.
say that a certain amount of the house, if the paint is peeling on a quarter of the house, if the paint is peeling on half of the house,
Right, it has to be addressed.
it has to be addressed?
Right, that's what I'm struggling with. I mean, as far as where do we,
And if they
where do
can't
you draw the
afford that-
line in it being meatier and having those types of guidelines in there, but not so restrictive that we're gonna cause people a financial
Because
hardship.
citing a house is very expensive, and as is having someone come out and paint that house.
Right.
So, I mean, you're talking about the thousands.
Oh, I understand. I've painted my house
Right.
twice and I've sided it.
Right, tens of maybe $20,000, right? So, if someone can't afford that, then what do they do?
No, that's where I get stuck. I don't, if that is a true statement and it's proven and it's factual and not just I don't want to spend the money on that. Because let's face it, there are people who also have plenty of the money and that's just not where they choose to put it.
Not a priority.
And fine, move somewhere else then. Because I don't want that to be like stay here because we like our town looking like that. That's my point.
Going to Belize may be a priority, not painting the
Yeah. Yeah, no, I understand. Would be mine too, but I don't, our town shouldn't be the one that we're inviting those, that type of mentality either though, because it's, doesn't create for a welcoming, clean-looking neighborhoods.
No,
I'm not looking to be a Westport, but I also, we need to clean up our act because we, and I'll be quite frank, it was doing a lot of walking around during the election. A lot of complaints from people on such issues. On, not just in your neck of the woods, but over in my neck of the woods too, where someone's house color is 3 different colors, depending on what you're looking at. I mean, it's,
The argument is that the person likes to express himself or herself that way.
Yeah,
well, that's where
They
the
like
blight
the
ordinance
gingerbread
and having a bit more of a guideline in it is a little bit, I think, necessary.
I mean, we're not an HOA, right?
No, we're not. We're not going to tell people what color to paint their house.
So maybe it's just like a certain amount of paint is peeling, or the siding, or a certain amount of siding has come off your house. I guess that's something we could,
I mean, I think we have to give this some thought because, again, I'm not looking for it to be penalizing, but I don't think it's wrong to have expectations that people maintain the properties to the best of their abilities. And when there are complaints from neighbors, to not dig our heels in and say tough cookies. Because that seems to be what happens with, anyway, the situations that I'm aware of. It's almost like a dig because it's a game.
so should we have something in there that says if somebody cannot, due to a financial hardship or a physical hardship where they can't do it? Or should we just leave that up to the hearing officer?
Well, I think the hearing officer, I think the enforcement officer has to enforce the ordinance the way it's written. So if we don't have anything about financial hardship, then the hearing officer has to hear the case based upon what the enforcement officer
So should,
I don't think the hearing officer has the authority to say, okay, Trish has a financial problem, we should impose these fines.
Well, I wouldn't be opposed to putting something like that in there, but then we have to talk about what types of, like, what
It
does
should be
financial
in the
hardship
ordinance.
mean?
It
Yes.
should be
Yes.
up to the hearing.
That's what I'm discussing, that's what I'd like, yeah.
I also think that we should have a 2-tier fine approach. The $150 for many of these items, but for example, high grass, healthy, $150 should be the fine. Maybe $50 a day, something like that. Or firewood that's not neatly stacked. However, I think the higher fines, the high fine should be applicable to the safety issues. I don't think a high lawn is necessarily a safety issue.
I wouldn't be opposed to that. It makes things a little bit less simple,
Yes.
but as long as there is a reference to, something to refer to on what those fines are, I don't see that as unreasonable or
Fencing that's
too
not
difficult.
maintained, structurally faulty foundation, that's a serious.
yeah. I think we should have something in there about no mow may. I said it slower for you.
They have here June 10th, greater.
Even when you said it slowly, I was like, what the heck is no momet? Am I the only one that's never heard that?
No mow May?
I've never heard of no mow May. I don't mow the lawn though. I heard that as one word, and I was like, what acronym is no mow May? No mow May? No more May what? What is May?
No.
I got what it is now.
Must be something you picked up in Alabama.
Oh, no.
So Fred's never heard of no mow May either.
You don't mow your lawn in May. It's for the bugs. And the DEP actually put a big thing out about it last year.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
We're not all DEP nuts. I know you are, but
Hey, now. It's conservation, but that's okay.
listen, I have bees buried near, and I would be just fine if I mowed them over and they went away, because they sting when you walk near them.
Well, gasoline didn't hurt them.
Yeah, so I just wanted to express my thoughts because I think this is going to
Yeah.
take a little time and thought because I disagree that I agree that the safety and the hazardous stuff should be in here, but I think we could do a much better job. Even when we held the symposium on strategic planning with the businesses, and that's
Yeah.
why I bring that up, that was one of the hot topics about when they have clients come through town or they want to build something, considering building something bigger. And it's a big, I won't mention names to throw anybody like on the spot that hasn't given me permission to, but it's a big name in town that does work with the town and does a lot of business in town and continues to expand. It's a hot topic about how the town looks as people are driving even just on 67 and what it looks like. So we really need to do a better job at giving this some thought on an aesthetic side because that's what one of the criteria, as I learned, businesses look for because they do have clients come into town
I agree
and
with
where
that.
they want to build. And while we have very little we own, I certainly don't want that to be a deterrent for what we are able to do with the businesses we do have in town. We want to maintain them and anyone that we can attract to town. So the aesthetic piece is a part of it really needs to be a part of our blight policy. I just want to be delicate and thoughtful about it because I totally recognize we are not a Westport. So it would be unrealistic and unreasonable of people to think we can manage things to that level. But we could absolutely do a better job because there's nothing about aesthetics or paint or crumbling walls or like if it's not safety or hazardous, it's not in here. And that gives the blight officers, they cannot do anything no matter how much people complain or scream about a problem or property. And I'm just using killing paint or no paint on a house
No.
as an example.
I agree. I agree. And you keep saying we're not a Westport, we're not this, but it's not about being one of those towns. It's about taking pride in your town. But we also have, renters, people that rent, and absentee landlords.
Well, then the absentee landlords need to be held accountable.
Yeah.
Because that still wouldn't fly in there's renters in Westport, and that would not fly.
No, I
So,
agree. So maybe
Again,
we
I'm not
kick this-
trying to be Westport, but we can do a better job.
Maybe we kick this back to the to the land use department with our thoughts about having something in there about aesthetics, painting, siding,
Maintaining,
maintaining,
Your
not
property.
just the safety.
and we don't need the
Precaution.
grass at 18 inches. That's awfully high. That doesn't look good. I don't know many communities that
And your
allow
grass
that.
does not get that high in May, because it's still growing, but it's growing very slowly.
So,
The typical lawn grass bats out, so it doesn't get to be 18 inches high. It's not
No.
like hayfield.
Right.
So I agree with you. It should be-
right, but if you drive around town, you will certainly see properties where it's clearly that high, if not higher.
But I'm just saying, the typical lawn grass doesn't go that high.
So we want to move the blight back to land use and add,
I don't know, is aesthetics the right word? That's really the only thing, property maintenance, like I don't really know. That it's the best word I could come up with.
Use the term aesthetics, that's even more subjective, much of this is.
right, I would use peeling of paint missing
Well,
of
yeah, but
siding?
it should be more encompassing than just that.
For example, what else?
I don't know, but I don't want to pigeonhole it to just, I mean, it's really the maintenance of your property.
But what may not look aesthetically pleasing to me may be aesthetically pleasing to somebody else.
I understand.
So it's up
So
for
I don't know what the
interpretation
right verbiage is, but, yeah, I don't want to polka dot house next to me, or a striped one for that matter, but
then. How about gingerbread?
gingerbread.
I know, I thought it said then in the blight ordinance that, you know, if more than X amount of square feet of paint are missing off a house.
I didn't see it, and
I didn't
I
see
know
it
we
either.
talked about it. We talked about it.
Or pieces of siding were missing off a house.
100 square feet or more.
Yeah.
Siding, not unpainted or paint chipping or peeling. Maybe we could have that type of language, peeling or chip paint. 100 square feet or more.
So that has the missing of siding in there, maybe just add the,
Yeah, chip, peeling,
mhm.
chip. Number 10 talks about the excessive or open storage of mechanical parts. I would like to take out excessive. I don't know what that means.
Excessive or open mechanical parts.
I would say just open storage of mechanical parts.
Or visible? Because if they put it behind a fence, it's one
Visible
thing.
to the public.
Yeah, something that would
Visible from the
recognize
road.
the visible, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe that word helps? I don't know.
What else did you have on that one?
Any thoughts about my idea that we have 2 tiers of fines?
I like the idea of having
I'm fine with that.
two tiers of
Something
fines.
lesser for high grass. It's a safety issue.
I mean, $100 for, you know, $65 to mow a lawn nowadays. So I would say, you know, $100 is a lot of money for mowing, not having mowed lawn. I would say $50, maybe tier 2,
It's a day.
yeah,
Cruise quickly.
tier 1, tier 2, you know. Maybe tier 1 for aesthetics and tier 2 for safety.
Sure. That's what I was saying, basically.
It would be difficult. I do like where she was mentioning, I know I walked in late, about some type of criteria around the aesthetics.
Mhm.
I don't know how you write it, and I don't know how you keep it open, so it's open
That's
where
been
you
my
need to,
quandary.
where you were kind of looking for, but there has to be some criteria around keeping things similar or common.
That's why we
Does
pay
it-
attorneys.
I'm a little
Right here.
Why we pay attorneys.
when you look at section 4-150, and it says with the exception of the below, I'm not sure what exceptions they're talking about, because it goes right into violations. Am I missing something? Sorry, I know I
You took
took
mine.
yours.
What is it?
So we have special considerations here. Where did it say that?
150 is over here.
Yeah. No, resident of the town of Seymour shall be a person of reasonable amount of time. except as noted below.
The blight enforcement officer shall provide a reasonable amount
Right, a
of
time to
That's
correct the blight
below.
problem. It says except as noted as below. So the blight enforcement officers shall provide a reasonable amount of time to correct a blight problem to a low-income individual who owns and occupies a residence that's designated and blighted, except as noted as below.
Blight enforcer may request documentation to verify that the individual is elderly, disabled, or low
I
income.
don't know that that's except as noted below, because then we go right into violation. So I needed a little more clear on what is the except as noted below, because when I see that, I feel like that should be bullet pointed somewhere, not kind of mixed below. I'm sure it's mixed somewhere in here, but
We can have
I
the,
want it to be clear, so when it says except as noted below, it should be bullet pointed in that section as the exceptions noted.
what we can do is we can have the blight enforcement come back in January.
We're not giving them any recommendations, though.
Oh, we'll give them recommendations.
Yeah, I won't approve it if they,
We wanna give them
Don't- if I don't
recommendations so
like
they
the
keep it-
changes.
Keep it in check.
Yeah.
So it doesn't get,
yeah. So I think this needs more work and consideration and thought, and
I think so too. I know what
it's
they-
not that I haven't. I have done a lot of thinking. I'm just struggling with verbiage and where to, strike a nice balance, but still add that meat that I'm looking for, that I think Seymour deserves and residents deserve, and,
Especially after last year.
yeah.
No, I think we go back to them with our corrections, but we have them come in January so we can actually sit down with them. And they could answer our questions as to what do you mean below. And instead of just having part of it, of them giving part of it, they give us the whole policy and they explain to us.
Well,
what-
we can tell them what we discussed and what we'd like to see between the tiers and the, I'm still gonna use the word aesthetic, because I'm at a loss of another word.
Yeah.
And, kind of giving them an out if proof is provided, but it has to be detailed with the criteria of what aesthetic means and what qualifies as, and then what's the criteria if there is a hardship that we need to take a look at to give them a pass or a much longer term or whatever.
And
As
then we
well
list
as
the criteria, or is that something that they should have? Do we list the criteria? Do we make the criteria and amend it? You know what I mean?
So if they're gonna come in January, I'd like to give them an opportunity to hear this feedback at first so that they can chew on that a little bit and maybe reorganize this or add some things.
Right, that's-
Look at the different fees that might be imposed for the differences, that we're talking about.
I don't want to make it overly complicated, maybe just 2 tiers, that's all.
Right. But I agree with that. I don't think that's unreasonable.
But I think giving them back a whole month, keep pushing it to them for a month.
Yeah, and if they need till February, then take till February, but
Yeah.
that's the feedback I have, and it's gonna be tough, which is why I'm saying, I don't know, with holidays, a month, I'm struggling with the verbiage myself. I know what I'm thinking about, but I wanna strike the right balance for our town. And in all the months I've been thinking about this since summer, I've yet to really reach a conclusion on what I think that should sound like or how it should read.
No problem. All right. So we'll go back to the board, not back to the board, back to the planning and zoning and blight with our recommendations, and then have them come back to us in January, and if they need more time, then February. For blight.
That's fine.
Okay. So then, we talked about that, the authorization of the automatic traffic enforcement safety, we're gonna push that to the Board of Selectmen so that they can do the 30-day notification, because the chief wrote that, and that's written on state statutes.
Right, I agree with that.
You agreed with that? The open burn ordinance, the fire marshal gave to me, but we actually have to give it to the Board of Selectmen, for the Board of Selectmen to push it to the blight, to the ordinance committee, and then the ordinance committee is gonna actually take that right back, and they're gonna push it right back to the Board of Selectmen, because it's the ordinance written by the state of Connecticut.
That's fine. I trust our fire marshal. He knows what
So
he's
do I.
doing explicitly, so he's very good at what he does.
So we have them do that. Is there any public comment on our ordinances? Any public comment going twice? Public comment going 3 times? No public comment. I will take that and I will adjourn the meeting at 6:53.